Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. A federal judge has approved AT&T's $85 billion merger with Time Warner after ruling the Justice Department failed to prove the merger violates antitrust laws. The far-reaching deal is expected to reshape the media industry and will give AT&T control over Warner Brothers film and television studios, along with CNN, TNT, HBO, and many other brands. Only 3 days after President Trump's inauguration, AT&T paid $600,000 to President Trump's personal lawyer and fixer Michael Cohen's company for help advising the telecom giant on how to steer the planned merger through regulatory scrutiny. Despite the money, the Justice Department sued to block the merger. Tuesday's approval of the AT&T Time Warner deal is expected to spur a flurry of other mergers and corporate consolidation across industries. In Yemen, the U.S.-backed Saudi-led coalition has launched an offensive against the key port city of Hoda. The offensive is expected to be the biggest battle in the coalition's ongoing 3-year assault against Yemen's Houthi rebels. The conflict has already killed 15,000 civilians, sparked the world's worst cholera epidemic, and pushed Yemen to the brink of famine. Humanitarian groups have warned the offensive could be a catastrophe for 250,000 civilians living in Hodeida and for the rest of Yemen, which is highly dependent on aid that travels through the port. This is Jens Larke with the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs.
Military attack or siege on Hodeida will impact hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians. In a prolonged worst case, we fear that as many as 250,000 people may lose everything, even their lives.
We'll have more on the offensive against Yemen's key port city, Hodeida, after headlines. We'll be speaking with Silicon Valley Congressmember Ro Khanna. In Afghanistan, at least 18 people were killed in Taliban attacks, including the governor of the northern Kohistan district Tuesday. The attacks came as the government's 8-day ceasefire was slated to take effect. The Taliban has announced its own ceasefire during the first 3 days of Eid later this week. In Israel, police again questioned Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in connection with one of a series of corruption cases. Protesters gathered outside Netanyahu's house on Monday night demanding his resignation as police questioned the prime minister inside his home about the bribery scandal involving communications giant Bezek Group, aimed at securing more favorable media coverage for Netanyahu and his family. A number of members of Netanyahu's inner circle have already been arrested in this corruption case. Back in the United States, voters went to the polls Tuesday for primaries in Virginia, South Carolina, Maine, Nevada, and North Dakota. In Maine, voters used a new type of voting system, ranked choice voting, which allows voters to rank their preferred candidates in order of preference. On Tuesday, Maine residents voted to also use this system for upcoming federal elections. But Maine's Republican Governor Paul LePage is now threatening not to certify the results of Tuesday's primary because of the ranked choice voting.
Choice voting, most horrific thing in the world. I will probably not certify the election. I will leave it up to the courts to decide.
Meanwhile, in South Carolina, Republican Congressmember Mark Sanford lost his primary election to State Representative Katie Arrington after he repeatedly criticized President Trump. In an unusual Election Day move, Trump attacked Sanford Tuesday by Twitter, tweeting, "Mark Sanford has been very unhelpful to me in my campaign to MAGA. He is MIA and nothing but trouble. He's better off in Argentina," the last part of a reference to the 2009 scandal in which then-Governor Sanford disappeared for a few days, first saying he was hiking the Appalachian Trail and later revealing he was having an extramarital affair in Argentina. After conceding defeat Tuesday night, Sanford said he did not regret criticizing President Trump.
It may have cost me an election in this case, but I stand by every one of those decisions to disagree with the president because I didn't think it, at the end of the day, was either concurrent with the promises I made when I first ran for office or the voices of the very people the first district that I represent.
In Virginia, former state Trump campaign co-chair Corey Stewart won the Republican Senate primary and will challenge Democratic Senator Tim Kaine in November. Stewart ran on a pro-Trump, far-right, anti-immigrant platform. He's also embraced the Confederate flag and refused to condemn white supremacists for their deadly rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. Women candidates also won big Tuesday night, including in Virginia, where State Senator Jennifer Wexton won her House Democratic primary. She'll challenge Republican Congresswoman Congresswoman Barbara Comstock in November. In Nevada, Susie Lee won her House primary race. The New York Times reports on the Democratic side, Tuesday's primary results were a victory for the Democratic establishment, with a number of candidates handpicked by party leaders beating out insurgent left challengers. On the Republican side, the results represented a victory for far right wing of the party, with Trump-aligned candidates beating out their challengers. In immigration news, McClatchy's reporting the Trump administration is considering building tent cities on Texas military bases to detain immigrant children being held in U.S. custody. There are now more than 10,000 immigrant children being held in U.S. custody as the Trump administration continues its policy of separating children from their immigrant parents at the border as the families pursue asylum claims. And in Orlando, Florida, hundreds gathered outside the Pulse nightclub Tuesday to honor the 49 people who were killed 2 years ago in one of the deadliest attacks ever on the LGBT community in the United States. The majority of those killed were young LGBT people of color. Meanwhile, also in Florida, students and activists organized a die-in near Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort to demand the administration take action to curb gun violence. Among those protesting and participating in vigils Tuesday were the survivors of the Valentine's Day massacre at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School that killed 17 people in Parkland, Florida, earlier this year. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.